socialstudiesgames.us, Unit 6, Video 5, as always based on the AP US History Guidelines. I can list the Populist Party's platform. A platform is simply the list of this political party's ideas or beliefs or their goals. So a platform is a list. You can see this if you go to Hillary Clinton's website, if you go to Donald Trump's website, you go to Barack Obama's website, you got to go through time to look at that again. Or if you look at Joe Biden's website, they'll have their platform. And it says, bullet point, here's what we believe, here's what I want, here are my goals. We're going to go back in time 100 years from now, over 100 years ago, and look at the Populist Party and what was their platform, what was their goals, what did they say? Here, if you vote for us, this is what we're going to do. I want you to be able to define initiatives, I want you to define referendums, and I want you to define a recall. And then last, describe the debate over gold and silver. We're not going to get into that in this video. That is a really tough topic. It will be in the next video. These are known as the forgettable administrations. Rutherford B. Hayes, James Garfield, Chester A. Arthur, Grover Cleveland, Benjamin Harrison, and then Grover Cleveland again gets elected, and not really much happens. And if your AP guidelines say that not much happens, then congratulations. You don't have to learn anything about these guys. It won't be on the test. If I throw out some stuff for you, James Garfield gets assassinated by a guy because he didn't give the dude a job. So that's always cool. I guess after 100 years, we can kind of joke around about it. But if I would have told that, laughed about that 100 years ago, probably would have been fired. Maybe you still get fired for that today. An interesting thing, though, they invented an X-ray. They invented the X-ray to try to find the bullet. They couldn't get the bullet out of him. He dies a month later. And then eventually, Alexander Graham Bell invents the X-ray, or actually not the X-ray, a metal detector. He invents the metal detector just for this specific cause. They're unable to get the bullet out of him, and he dies from the infection. But now we've got metal detectors, so that's pretty cool. What else? Grover Cleveland is the first Democrat that gets elected as a president. You think, well, so what? Well, that's kind of a big deal because it was the Democrats that were pro-slavery. It was the Democrats that seceded prior to the Civil War. He is the first Democrat since before the Civil War to become president. That's a big deal. The Democrats, that was the South. Those were the pro-slave states. They fought a war against America and they lost. And afterwards, in Reconstruction, most of those Democrats had their voting rights taken away, had their rights to hold office taken away. We're talking about 40 years? Well, not 40 years, 20 years. It takes 20 years for a Democrat to finally become elected president again. So you're probably saying, well, that's a big change. Yeah, right. Do you know anything about the U.S. government? Meet the new boss, same as the old boss, nothing really changes. They think that, if we're going to elect a Democrat, this guy's going to be pro-worker, he's going to be pro-farmer, and all these fat cat robber barons and all these monopolies and the railroads and the banks, we're finally going to shut them down because we finally got a Democrat again. Yeah, right. Same old, nothing changes. Just like today, you may be politically active and you might have your heart set on one guy. Maybe you're Yang Gang and you're rooting for somebody to be elected president. And you said, this guy's going to change everything. And then he gets elected. Maybe he will get elected. And then you're like, yes, everything's going to be awesome. And nothing changes. And then a really bad guy gets elected president. You're like, oh, God, the world's going to end. And nothing changes. Come on, folks. There's a ruling elite in this country. Forgettable administrations. The platform. So the Populist Party, their platform, they want. I'm going to give you the whole list. I'm going to explain it over the next several videos. Unlimited coinage of silver. They want a bunch of silver coins. What does that do? I'll explain it in the upcoming videos of why that is important. They want a graduated income tax. What does that mean? I'll explain it in the upcoming videos. Also part of their platform, government subsidies to farmers. What is a subsidy, man? I don't get any of this. I know, they're using funky language. Well, they're using regular language. And as you become a social studies scholar, you'll be completely familiar with these things because you really need to know what a subsidy is if you want to be a successful American citizen or if you plan on voting anytime soon. 8-hour work. Okay, you get that one. All right, cool. Thank goodness they gave us a simple one there. And then direct election of senators, another thing that we take for granted. None of these things really existed then. What's he doing on my screen? Well, guess what? He is a modern populist. He and Bernie Sanders are very similar in that a lot of their proposed wishes, a lot of their platforms were proposals aimed at helping directly the populists. The populists, where we get the populist party. And what is the populace? It's the people. And if people want immigration change, then he does it for the people. And if the people want trade barriers that protect American jobs, then that's what he does. And if the people want health care, as Bernie Sanders has argued, then that's what he does. He is a populist. He listens to the people and tries to do what serves the regular everyday man. Supposedly, in theory, Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump want to pass laws and build their platform around rules and regulations and laws that help the regular everyday people, which we call the populists, not the bankers, not the rich guys and the investors on Wall Street, and not the owners of industry or the captains of industry or other political cronies. Their job is to represent the everyday man. Again, this is all in theory. This is all what we are told. But does it ever really happen? We shall see. So if you just had an aneurysm because Donald Trump was on your screen, then you just need to chill out a little bit. You're taking some of this stuff a little too seriously. We're just trying to pass some history tests. You don't have to go all in on social studies. Maybe it's just not your thing. And maybe if it is your thing, you need to dial it down. Populists. So we talk about unlimited coinage of silver. They want the populist party, and the people in that political party want more silver coins. Basically what we're saying is, or what they were saying is, we need more money. And you've probably thought that to yourself too. If I just had more money, my life would be better. If I had more money, I could buy more things. And if I bought more things, they would make more things. And if they make more things, then they'll hire more workers. And they have more workers with more money. And look, it really works out that way. So just make more money. That's kind of, actually, it doesn't work that way. It's much more complex. And that's why I will go into that in the next video of you can't just make more money or print more money or issue out more silver coins. You just can't do that. But you can do it a little bit. You can increase the money supply somewhat. Let's explain what they had in mind. If the government would simply just issue more silver coins or put more money in circulation, basically that's going to go through the banks, but eventually it will be loaned out. It'll go to businesses. It'll go to people. But eventually, when the government prints more money, eventually when the government issues more coins, that money is going to find its way into the hands of consumers. It's going to find its way into your pocket. And from your pocket, you spend it at the store. You buy goods. Whatever you buy, the supplier, McDonald's and cheeseburgers, GameStop with PlayStation 4s, whatever it is you buy, they will have to make more cheeseburgers. They will have to make more PlayStation 4s. They will have to make more guitars. They will have to make more trucks. Whatever it is, that happens when you buy goods. And when you buy more, the factory has to make more, and that means they need to hire more workers. And then that means we have more people with money in their pocket. And then this guy on here, he decides, well, now I got money, and I'm going to spend my money too. And when he spends money, then we get another worker. And when we get another worker, he spends more money, and it all goes up and up. And then everybody's got money, and everybody's happy. Everybody's happy. That guy's, even she's happy. He's happy. We're all happy. And it all happens when you make more money. Now, it's not that easy, because if you're listening and say, I get it. It makes sense. That is an awesome idea. Why doesn't the government just print more money? And I know you've had that thought. Just print more money. We will talk about that in the next video, the problems you're going to run into with that. But you get that so far. The next goal of the populist, a graduated income tax. First issue that I need to settle with you is when I talk about a tax or taxes, it's not the money that you get in January or that you received in April. That is not what taxes are. That is income tax season when you have probably given too much money to the government already. You have already given too much money to the government already. As you get older, and when you start getting a job, and to the people that are listening that already have a job, and this is pretty pedantic and ridiculous to hear, I am sorry, I apologize to you that you have your money taken out of your pocket and that you have to then have me explain it to you. But for a middle school student or a 9th grade or 10th grade student who doesn't have a job and has never been taxed yet and doesn't realize how terrible, terrible, terrible this world is, I have to explain it to them. So you get a paycheck, and in that paycheck, A little bit is taken out. Actually, a lot of it is taken out. That is your income, the money you earn. There's a tax on your income. Basically, the government says if you earn $10, the government's going to need 3 of those. You can keep 7, but the government's going to take 3. That's not fair. That's the way it is. That's the way it's always been. Well, there's always been taxes. There hasn't always been an income tax, which might surprise some people. Wait a second. There was a time where they didn't take our income? Yes, there was. But those days are gone, long gone. Get used to it. When you earn money, you bring money in, they're going to take some of that money out. Just the way it is. Now, the Populists said, all right, we got an income tax, but what we want is a graduated income. You've heard of graduate, when you go on to something else, or gradual, meaning to go up slowly but surely, to increase. A graduated income tax means this. This guy makes $40,000 a year. 20% of that, he is taxed at a rate of 20%. And if I did the calculation, beep, boop, bop, boop, boop, in my calculator, that's $8,000 that the government is going to take from him. They take it out of every single paycheck. Now, some people get taxed at the end of the year. Either way, he works all year. He keeps $32,000, and then $8,000 must go to the government. That's an income tax. Now, a graduated income tax is what the populists were arguing for 100 years ago, and what some modern-day populists, like Bernie Sanders, are arguing for today. Now, this is not the Trump populists. The Trump populists are not arguing for a graduated income, but the socialist left Democrats are and have always been since this day. And we have had graduated income taxes in the past. We have. This is something that has existed and has gone away and has existed. So during this time period, the populists are saying this is what we want. This person earns more monies. And so the theory is by the populists is that if you're earning more monies, then you can afford to pay a little bit more. And you'll notice that this guy's got a 25%. He pays more in taxes. He has a larger tax rate because he can afford it. He's got more monies. And so technically he ends up paying $15,000. He still takes home $45,000. Hey, whatever. Some people say that's smart. That's great. And then we go at this guy. He's rich. And so we hit him with a 50% income tax, a graduated income tax. And we've had much higher. We've had graduated income taxes of almost 90% in this country. He gets hit with a 50%. That means he makes $1 million this year. The government takes $1 million. We can argue all day about this, and we can go over the scientific facts. We can go over the actual data and income revenue, and I can show you exactly why this does not work, does not benefit the country. But here's the issue. Most of the time when you have this debate or conversation with any American, they do not listen to the facts. And that is okay. That is very common in most situations for people to ignore facts. It happens, especially when we talk about money. What will happen in most situations when I go through this presentation of a graduated income tax? You have already made up your mind whether or not the data shows that, you know what, this actually doesn't help the country at all. And I could show you that this does not help the country at all, but that doesn't matter because you will decide whether you like this or not because you are either a low income or a middle income person or whether you have or desire to become a very wealthy person. That is it. Basically, it is a test of what you think, almost your morals or your instincts, what you think is right or wrong. Whether you subscribe to the wealthy being evil or the poor being evil, you basically make up your mind immediately. You do not even look at these numbers and say whether something works or not. You just instinctively you say, this is good for him. This is a good system. Or you instinctively say, this is a bad system. You don't listen to the facts. The facts are going to tell you this system does not work at all. One idea is that in our country that we are all equal under the law. What's one of the basic principles of a democracy in which you have liberty. Liberty is basically the idea free of unfair restrictions or the freedom from restrictions by the government. And one of those liberties is that we should all have the same liberty. We should all be treated equally. Now, this is not equal. This is not the government treating people equal. Now, if you look at the Constitution, you're going to see that the government mainly says we can't treat you differently based on your race, your religion, your creed, your sex. There is nowhere in the government's documents that said that we cannot treat people unequally based on income. You can look in the Constitution, and it does not say that discriminating based on wealth is illegal. They can. We can. The government can tax you more. But, so the Constitution permits this. This is absolutely allowed based on the Constitution. You cannot treat people unequally based on, again, their race, their religion, their creed, their sex. Can't do that. You got to treat women and men equally. You got to treat black, white, Hispanic equally. You got to treat Protestants and Catholics and Muslims equally. The government must. The government must do that. But it does not say that the government has to treat the wealthy the same as low-income individuals. That is not the case. But if we are truly a democracy and we truly believe in equality, then we really shouldn't have this conversation. If we are going to treat people equally, then we need to treat them equally. This is not very democratic. This is not equal. But again, that doesn't matter. The righteousness, the moral nature of this argument does, unfortunately, that's what matters most to people. Populists also want government-owned railroads. Now, you can support whatever you want here. It's up to you. Again, here we got another issue with... So we talked about the Panic of 1893. We talked earlier in this unit in video 2 about how the farmers were struggling because the rich railroad owners were raising prices to ship goods. And if you wanted to get your stuff from Salt Lake City to Chicago, you want to send your corn over there, well, you had to use the railroad. You couldn't get it there anywhere else. We did not have roads. And if you put it on a wagon, by the time it reaches Denver, your corn's going to be bad or your meat will be spoiled if you're trying to get your steer from Dallas up here to Dodge City and then over to Chicago. You got to pay his price to use his railroad, period. He built it. He paid for it. He owns it. And if he jacks the price up on you, then that was the way it was. Farmers were really being hurt by this. They could not afford this. They couldn't make money. They didn't like it. So they said, we have to take the railroads from the rich. You have to literally take their property away from them, which again violates the Constitution. The government shouldn't be able to take your life, liberty, or property without due process. And that way, if you take it away from him, we don't have to worry about these jacked up rates anymore. The government should control the railroads like they do the roads today. And then they could control the price. And so the farmers can start making money. And look, this sounds great. And this sounds awesome in a utopian situation where all the farmers are guaranteed a decent price. And that's awesome. But this is the assumption, though, that this guy right here was charging an unfair price. He was sticking it to the people. That's just not the case. If he raised his rates, he raised his rates because he owns the railroads. And if he is the only person that owns the railroads, then guess what? The supply of railroads is low. Thus, the price must be high. That's how it works. You know what the alternative is? Instead of the government taking someone's railroad and making some phony price, because remember, prices should not be set by the government. Prices should be set by supply and demand. Oh, guess what? Demand for railroads was really high too. And when demand or people really, really want something, what do you think happens to the price? Think about it in your life. When someone really, really wants something, it's really important the price of it goes up. So you had low supply, you had high demand. That's why the price was so high. Sure, he may have been a bad guy too, whatever. He's a bad guy, but he was simply following the laws of economics. Low supply, high demand. You have to charge. The job of a business owner isn't to cut deals. If you're running a business, you're running a business to make money. He's not running a charity. He is not running a church. His job is to make money. He has employees that work for him. And if he doesn't make enough money, he can't pay his employees. He has investors that have purchased part of his railroad. And if he doesn't make enough money, he doesn't pay his investors. We have this assumption that he's just doing it to stick money in his own pocket and so that he can get rich. That's not always the case. For whatever reason, we just assume that the boss is evil, that the boss is bad. What if it's possibly the prices were high? Because those are the laws of economics. And then if the government's just going to take it over, which is terrible for taking its property, and then just make up a phony price. Here's your alternative. Now, this is the populist plan, and a lot of the populist plans are pie in the sky, dreams, and crazy wishes. What simply needed to be done was you needed to build more railroads. Build more railroads. And as the supply of railroads went up, then the price would go down. And guess what? That's exactly what happened if you followed the Panic of 1893. We talked about this. They produced too many railroads, and in doing so, the prices dropped. That's good. The government doesn't have to control the price. They don't have to subsidize farmers and subsidize the price. Whatever. Subsidizing farmers. Now, this technically was a subsidy to farmers, but here's a more specific subsidy of farmers. And a subsidy is basically just a free government handout. You're giving money to help people out. Here's the deal with farming, if you're not aware of it. Sometimes there are bad years. Sometimes it doesn't rain enough, and your crops don't grow. And when your crops don't grow, you can't sell crops. If it's a bad season, you can't produce crops, and you go out of business. But it's worse than that, because if you go out of business, then you can't produce food, and people around the country are going to starve. So if you have a bad season, there's a chance that the losses that you take make your farm shut down completely. And if you have a bad season and your farm shuts down completely, then that means no more food. And that means no more food. And that's really bad for the country. It's not just bad for me, the farmer. It's bad for everyone. At least that's what the populists want you to believe. The populists are going to tell you this is bad for everybody, not just a single farmer. So what the government should do is subsidize the farmer. Give him a little bit of money, so when that bad year happens, he's able to hang on and his farm doesn't go out of business. And so next year he is able to produce food, and we are munching on some corn on the cob and everything is good. And then it all happens because the government subsidized us. It is a subsidy. It's basically a handout to help you out through the hard times. The Populist Party said, you got to help the farmers. They're already getting jobbed by the railroad owners who are jacking the price up. And now you get one bad season and you got to shut the farm down. You shut the farm down. There's no corn. There's no corn for the people. And now one little farm's problem turns into a problem for thousands of people across the country. Not so fast, my friend. So if you want to become a farmer, let me ask you this. So basically what we're doing is we are taking out the risk. We're taking out the risk of being a farmer by subsidizing. No risk. What other job do we simply say, I think the government should take out the risk? If I open a restaurant and my food isn't very good and no one comes to my restaurant, guess what happens? I go out of business. Would you ever think of the government subsidizing the local Mexican restaurant? Should the government help them out during their bad times? Oh, I'm sorry, I took a risk opening a restaurant. Because when you open a restaurant, you don't know if people are going to come. You don't know if the town is going to keep coming. You don't know, maybe the town's going to move away. What if the factory shuts down and everybody leaves town and your restaurant's stuck there? Well, you're out of luck. You took a risk. You taking a risk. You don't know when you open a restaurant if anyone's going to go there. If you open a video game store tomorrow, you're taking a risk. You don't know if people are going to continue to buy your video games. Maybe they're going to pirate the games. Maybe they're going to download them online. You're taking a risk. That's what you do when you start a business. There's risk involved. We don't think that the government should bail out video game stores. No one would think that. No one thinks that the government should bail out a Mexican restaurant. You took a risk. Do or die. Live or die. Whichever. That's the way it works. And it's the same thing with farming. When you decide to become a farmer, you know that there can be bad years. You know that this can happen. It's a risk that you're willing to take by becoming a farmer. And if you're not willing to take that risk, then guess what? Don't become a farmer. If you're not willing to take the risk, then don't open a restaurant. Then don't open the video game store. Don't do it. What you should do is just go get a factory job where you don't have to worry about risk. Go work at McDonald's. Go get a job as a teacher. Go take a low-risk job where you don't have to worry if it doesn't rain. You don't have to worry if people decide that we don't like Mexican food anymore. We don't have to worry that, oh, this is too spicy. We don't have to worry about that stuff. Get a job with low risk. If you're not a risk-taking person, then don't. But what the populists were saying is, no. We want them to be a farmer anyway. They shouldn't have to worry about risk. And if they have a bad year, the government will help them out. That's stupid. If you're a farmer, then guess what you need to do? I'm sorry, but it's stupid. You should save your money in case you have a bad year. And when you have a bad year, that money that you saved will help you through. And so then when during the next, so you don't shut down, and the next year you rebound. With the subsidies, this is an incentive by the government saying, you don't need to save your money. You don't need to be frugal. You don't need to be careful with your money because you can just blow it on whatever you want. And when a bad year comes, we'll bail you out. The government is thus incentivizing him to behave badly. The government, when they give an incentive and take away the risk, are incentivizing or influencing or persuading the farmer to not be frugal, not save, not prepare for a bad day. And I hear you out there saying, the farmer can't control the weather. Yes, the farmer can't control the weather. But you and I are not farmers. And you and I both know that there will be years where we have droughts. There will be years where there's bad weather. And if I know that, then the farmer has to know that. And the farmer has to be aware of the risk. And the farmer should prepare for the risk. Just like you or I, you could get sick tomorrow, and it is in your best interest to save money to prepare for that. Your car could break down tomorrow, and it is your best interest to save money or to have insurance. You prepare for those moments, just like the farmer should prepare for those moments. The government should not bail everyone out. Now, some people, the populists, think, no, the government should bail people out. The government should be in control. Now, if you do believe that, and that's fine. But the question then is, where does this money come from? How much more writing is he going to do on the screen? Where did that money come from? The government gave to the farmer. Oh, guess what? That money came from you and me. So we paid our taxes to pay for the farmer on his bad day. Who's paying for you on your bad day? Guess what? You don't get a subsidy because you're not a farmer. The farmers were chosen. The guy that runs the Mexican restaurant and he has a bad year, do our tax money go to him to bail him out? Nope. His tax dollars that he pays goes to bail someone else out while he struggles. We often denigrate and look down upon the poor or low-income individuals or families with single parent households that receive food stamps, which is known as SNAP, WIC benefits, Medicaid. The government gives money to low-income families who are struggling, helps them with their rent, helps them buy food. Helps them with school lunch. And unfortunately, in this country, a lot of times middle-class or upper-class Americans look down upon those people because you're using government money because you can't take care of yourself. Under that same theory, if you are one of those individuals and you are going to look down upon low-income families, then you also then must look down upon farmers. Because they're also, like I just mentioned, receiving subsidies and government bailouts to help them out while they struggle. And you can argue, oh, but they're working. Well, yes, so are low-income families. A lot of single mothers are working as well. They're just doing a different job. And just because this single mother is waiting tables, it's no different than being a farmer. Oh, well, this is hard work and people need food. Well, people need waiters, and single mothers do what they got to do in whatever job or industry. And some of these single mothers might be teachers. Some of these single mothers may work at Head Start. Some of these single mothers may be working at the front office at the local mechanics. You can't really generalize everything and put everybody into one bubble. But we can say, if the government is giving money here and the government is giving money here, if you don't like it here, then you shouldn't like it here. And if you're okay with it here, then you need to be okay with it here. There's not much different. In the end, we are still talking about government subsidies. It's government helping people out. How about an easy topic? One a little less loaded that we all can agree on. the 8-hour workday. Now, I said in the other video that they were working 24 hours a day. Well, it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I want to get a point across. Your typical workday was probably about 10 hours a day, which is still too much. And the Populists fought for the 8-hour workday. 8 hours of rest. Yeah, right. Who gets 8 hours of rest? I got a 7-month-old child at home. 8 hours of rest. Yeah, right, Populists. You know what? I don't want an 8-hour workday. I wish the Populists would have gotten the 8 hours of rest. I don't know how you would have guaranteed that. You'll have to talk to my son about how you're going to make that work. But I'll tell you, I will vote for the modern Populists if they can somehow make it a law that I can get 8 hours of sleep each night. That would be wonderful. But the Populists decided that we would do 8 hours for work. That's fine. That's not too bad either. And they get that one through. That is part of the Populist Party platform. All right, keep it on going. Direct election of senators. This is what we have today. And we could thank the Populists for the direct election of senators or not, if you really even care. Again, this one may be more of one of those things that you see on an AP test question. Here's how it worked before. Each government or each state, we'll say Montana, has their own local government. So in Washington, D.C., we have the federal government, and it has a legislative branch. It has the executive with the president and a judicial branch. Inside the legislative branch, we have the House of Representatives, and we have the Senate, which is what we were really talking about here. So this is the federal government. And then in each state, we have our own individual legislative branch. So each state has a legislative branch and an executive branch for that matter. But we're really mainly just talking about the legislative branch. Each state has their own legislative branch. Every single one of them. So how did this used to work? How did we used to pick senators? You would vote, and then you would vote for the representatives in the House, in the legislative branch. You would pick for representatives in your local state legislative branch. You would pick your local representative. So I live in North Carolina, in Greensboro, North Carolina, and in this area, I have a representative. And that guy represents me in the local state government. Now, what we used to do was I would pick a guy, he would serve in the local state government, and then that local state government would get together and they would vote for a senator. Sounds kind of convoluted. It sounds like a meaningless steps. I vote for these guys. I vote for them, and they vote to pick this guy. So I vote for them, they pick him. Step 1, step 2, to pick a senator. I pick them, and then they decide who will be the senator from the state of Montana. Or the local North Carolina government will decide who will be the senator from North Carolina. So you pick the government that picks the government. Okay, you pick the government that picks the government. Well, why don't we just pick the senator? Direct elections of senators. The Populists say this is stupid. Why are we voting for guys to vote for guys? We pick our House of Representatives members already. And that was the case then. It's the case now. We directly elect our House of Representatives members. We directly, for the most part, elect our president. Why don't we directly elect our senator too? Doesn't that make sense? I think that makes sense. It's a pretty good idea, Populists, and that's what we have today. We vote directly for the senator. We get rid of this nonsense step. Directly for the senator. What is a referendum? All right. So the main way that we pass laws is we vote for a representative like our senator, which we directly elect. Now, I've got to stop saying directly elect, directly elect. Say that 5 times fast. We vote for a senator or representative, depends on which House of Congress we're talking about. And then that guy votes along with the other senators and the other representatives to whether they pass a law or not. Or not. That's how it works. Most of the time, 99.999% of the time, this is how it works. We vote for people, they're our representatives, and then they read all the issues and they make an educated decision and vote of whether we create laws or not. Referendums are different, obviously. If you read the part on the screen, the people vote. not the representative on an issue. Not the representative. We don't use that. So basically it's people, referendum. And like, for example, let's decide that we want to lower the voting age to 15, which that's a bad example because you can't do that because it's a constitutional amendment. You have to change the Constitution. Let me give you a better example. Let's say we want to ban sugar. The people could all come together in all the states. Typically, you see this on a more local scale. But anyway, the people all come together and they vote yes or nah on banning sugar. Or how about an 8-hour workday law? A recall, to pull back. People can vote to remove someone from office. So again, the people vote. Again, the power to the people. That's what the populists are all about. Returning government power to the people. Populists. The populists are the people. And the Populist Party was based on the idea of there's too much government power. There's too much power in the hands of the elites. And the rules, the regulations, the laws should be determined mainly by the people. And all of these platform ideas that we have gone over are generally aimed at the people. A referendum, let the people decide. Coin more money, put more money in the hands of the people. Government should regulate the prices of the railroad because the rich elite railroad owners are sticking it to the people. The farmers need to be helped out because the farmers still at this time, because it's between an agrarian or an agricultural based economy and a rapidly evolving manufacturing based economy. We're switching, but we still have a lot of farmers in this country. So the farmers make up a large portion of the populace, and the farmers are all mainly part of this populist party. So here's again another example of the people wanting to make the decisions. And then this way you can actually kick out your government officials. And this happened recently. It didn't end up happening. They had a recall vote, but ended up saying, nah. They had to vote to get rid of the governor of Wisconsin. The people voted, and he survived just barely. That's going to wrap up today. The next video is going to go crazy into gold versus silver, and we're going to talk about that issue with just printing money. Going back to the very beginning of the lesson, why don't we just print more money to make life better? I will explain to you why that's a bad idea. But today, you should have a good idea of the Populist Party, and it's very attractive. Probably to most of the people that are listening to this video, you are not wealthy, you are not elite, you're not a banker, you're probably a regular student that's part of the Populists, and a lot of these ideas sound really good. But one thing that you have to remember with these platforms or these beliefs is that all this stuff doesn't come for free. And a lot of times, anything that the government does to help one side is going to hurt another side. It's very difficult to help everyone all at once. Nonetheless, the ideas sound like they have a lot of heart and they are for a good cause. But again, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Remember that. Be able to define an initiative. We didn't go over initiatives, so don't worry about that. We did go over referendum. That's where the people get to directly vote for a lot. Well, it's kind of the same thing. These are basically the same thing. An initiative is where people come together. Might as well tell us. I don't know why I took this out of the lesson, but an initiative is where the people design a law. The people do, not the representatives. And a referendum is when we vote on said specific law. And a recall is where we decide to vote someone out and someone's saying, why don't we recall Donald Trump? Doesn't work like that on the national level. But from a state level, you can have recall votes to remove someone from office. For the president, there is a specific process in the Constitution that you have to follow. Thanks for joining me, folks. That's a long one, wasn't it? I think it was a long one.